American women don't call men emotionally immature because they hate them. They do it because they don't understand what men are actually carrying. She sat across from me and said, "He doesn't open up. He shuts down. He can't talk. He's emotionally immature." And a week later, a man in another city told me, "Every time I try to talk, it gets turned into an argument. I'm not immature. I'm exhausted." Two people telling two completely different stories about the same problem. And in those two stories lies the truth about why American women think men are emotionally immature, and why men feel misunderstood because of it. Modern America is witnessing a widening emotional gap between men and women. And this gap has created one of the most common frustrations women express today. Men are emotionally immature. But the real question isn't whether men are immature. The real question is, why do American women believe this? Because behind that frustration lies a misunderstanding so deep and so unaddressed that both genders feel completely unheard. American women aren't calling men emotionally immature to insult them. They're saying it because men and women operate under two entirely different emotional systems. Women grew up in a culture that encouraged emotional expression, social connection, vulnerability, self-awareness, and communication. Men grew up in a culture that punished all of those things. Women were taught to talk. Men were taught to endure. Women were taught to express. Men were taught to suppress. Women were told feelings build connection. Men were told feelings ruin masculinity. And now, as adults, the same women who learned emotional fluency expect men to meet them at that level, not realizing men were never given the tools to speak the same language. American women interpret male silence as immaturity. But for men, silence is not immaturity. It's survival. Men shut down because emotions were never safe for them. They go quiet because they learned early that expressing feelings results in mockery, weakness, or punishment. Men avoid emotional confrontation because they associate conflict with danger, not connection. And when women push harder for emotional expression, men pull back even further. Not because they don't care, but because they don't know how to navigate emotional intensity without losing respect, losing control, or losing the relationship. The truth is, American men aren't emotionally immature. They're emotionally undertrained. What women see as immaturity is often a man protecting himself. Many American men grew up without fathers who modeled healthy vulnerability. They never saw a man express hurt without anger. They never saw a man communicate sadness without shame. They never saw a man ask for help without mockery. They learned that masculinity requires emotional isolation. So when a woman says, "Talk to me," men freeze. Not because they don't want to talk, but because they don't know how to access emotions without feeling exposed. They fear saying the wrong thing. They fear being judged. They fear losing respect. They fear emotional vulnerability being used against them later. And so they choose silence, not immaturity. Another major reason women think men are emotionally immature is because women express emotions through words, and men express emotions through actions. When a man fixes something, solves a problem, shows up quietly, gives time, gives resources, or protects the people he loves, that is his emotional language. But women often misinterpret action-based love as avoidance, distance, or lack of emotional depth. Men aren't immature. They're misunderstood. A man may not say, "I'm hurting," but he will distance himself. He may not say, "I love you," but he will work all day to provide. He may not say, "I'm stressed," but his silence, his tension, or his withdrawal says everything. Women interpret this as lack of emotional intelligence, but it is simply a different emotional expression. Also, American women often mistake men's emotional pacing for immaturity. Women process emotions fast. They talk, express, reflect, and resolve quickly. Men process slowly. They think internally. They compartmentalize. They analyze before expressing. When a woman demands immediate emotional clarity, men feel pressured, and pressure makes them shut down. It's not immaturity, it's overload. Women want immediate emotional transparency. Men need time to translate feelings into words. Both are valid, but both clash. There's another layer. American men shut down because they fear emotional confrontation with women. Not all women, but many American women use emotional language aggressively, raising voices, interrupting, questioning, analyzing, escalating. Men see emotional arguments not as communication, but as conflict. Women escalate emotionally because they want connection. Men withdraw because they want peace. Women say, "Talk to me." Men think, "If I talk, this gets worse." Women say, "You don't communicate." Men think, "Every time I try, it turns into a fight." Women interpret withdrawal as immaturity. Men see it as self-protection. American women also label men immature because men often avoid heavy emotional topics. But avoidance isn't immaturity, it's fear. Men fear disappointing the women they love. They fear failing to meet expectations. They fear conflict that makes them feel inadequate. They fear being blamed for emotions they barely understand within themselves. So men avoid emotional danger zones the same way they avoid physical danger. Women see avoidance as immaturity. Men see immaturity as being forced into emotional spaces they aren't prepared for. There's also a generational shift. American women are increasingly educated, emotionally articulate, self-reflective, and socially interconnected. They talk to friends about relationships, go to therapy, consume emotional content online, and analyze their own patterns. Men, meanwhile, often have no emotional support system. They don't talk to friends about feelings, they don't express internal struggles, they don't have emotional resources. Women mistake this emotional isolation for immaturity. But men aren't behind. They were simply raised differently. And then there's trauma. American men have emotional wounds they never discuss. Family pressure, childhood trauma, financial stress, performance anxiety, fear of failure, loneliness, shame, societal expectations. These wounds make emotional exposure terrifying. Women think men are emotionally immature because they never see the depth beneath the silence. They don't understand how much fear sits behind the walls men build. Here's the balanced truth. Women aren't wrong for wanting emotionally present men. Men aren't wrong for struggling to become emotionally open. Women want connection. Men want safety. Women want expression. Men want stability. Women want emotional honesty. Men want emotional acceptance. Both genders want the same thing, but they go about it differently. American women think men are emotionally immature because they measure men by female emotional standards. American men feel judged because they are expected to communicate like women without being taught how. Neither gender is wrong, but both are unprepared for each other. The real reason American women think men are emotionally immature? Because society raised women to express emotions and raised men to survive them. Because women want emotional partnership and men want emotional peace. Because women talk to understand and men think to understand. Because women interpret silence as absence and men interpret intensity as danger. Because American culture shaped two different emotional worlds and now expects them to blend seamlessly. If women understood the emotional wounds men carry, they would see strength beneath the silence. If men understood the emotional needs women have, they would see connection beneath the intensity. Neither gender is childish. Neither gender is broken. They are simply trying to love with different emotional languages in a world that never taught them how to translate. This is Mendecoded, where we don't blame men, don't shame women, and don't avoid the truth. We decode it.